Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 266 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. That is available now on Amazon. Go and pick up that book today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, today we're going to be talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion on college campuses. And I've been talking about this for years and years and years. If you want your fraternity or sorority to be operating at a top level, the key to that is diversity within your organization. And I know that is true not only for my undergraduate chapter, but also for today. As I build a company, I'm making sure that I have diverse people on my team because they can see things that I can't see. And it's really important to have all those different lenses around you to point those things out, because without their help and support, there is no way possible that we would be as successful as we are. It enables us to make faster decisions and better decisions as a team because they're all bringing their individual lenses to the table. And the quicker you realize that on a college campus, the better it's going to work out for you and your fraternity or sorority. Now, our next guest, her name is Dr. Amanda Banks. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Banks. Dr. Banks is an author and a race and gender equity consultant. She has over 15 years of experience working with diverse populations, and she aids individuals and organizations in building leadership capacity to become a catalyst for social, cultural, and economic change. Strategies and tools will equip leaders to challenge social and political structures that render inequities and poor outcomes for people of color, women, and other vulnerable populations. Welcome to the show, Dr. Banks.
Hi there, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, the pleasure is all mine. I knew as soon as I met you that you would be an outstanding guest on our show for so many different reasons. So I can't wait. I mean, I've been looking forward to this all day long. Now, let's go back to the beginning here because you have done some amazing things in your life. You are a former All-American in the triple jump. You're also a member of the Texas Tech Hall of Fame and Southwest Conference Hall of Fame. So I want to know what made you choose Texas Tech.
I'll tell you, Mike, I actually had no desire to compete in collegiate athletics, but it was a teammate who became a teammate, but it was a distance runner from El Paso, which is where I went to high school, who began sharing information with me about the coach. And this was at the regional track meet while I was competing in the triple jump. And so after that conversation, I started doing research about Coach Scott. And the more I learned about her, I knew that was the place I wanted to be. And I knew, you know what, I do want to compete in collegiate athletics. But it was because of the resume of Jarvis Scott that led me to go to Texas Tech.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you want to work with people that you get along with, that you know that they're experts in their field, that you can depend on them. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you know, back in high school, I did the 200, the 400, the long jump. I tried to do the pole vault and oh my God, I failed so miserably. I had like no upper body strength whatsoever in high school. That didn't come until later. And so I'm sitting there trying to do it. And I just failed over and over and over again. I could never get over the bar.
That is like the scariest event to me is the pole vault. There is just no way. And I was actually a long jumper. It wasn't until the last meet of the district meet of my senior year that I started triple jumping.
Yeah.
But pole vault, I would have never. I salute any and everyone who does the pole vault.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't do it. But I tell you what, the secret to doing the long jump, even the triple jump to a certain extent, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive because when you first start to learn how to do the long jump, you're thinking that you need to get as much distance as you possibly can. And then eventually everything clicks. And what I mean by that is that suddenly you realize your goal is actually to get as high as you possibly can, and that's going to carry you even further.
That's right.
But it's kind of counterintuitive. So I struggled for a little bit, and finally I had a coach who worked with me, and he's like, Mike, next time out, your speed is great. Just try to get as high as you can, as opposed to as far
That's
as
right.
you can.
Go up before you get out.
Go up before, and suddenly, like it just took, and suddenly from that point forward, it was just amazing. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those times. Now, you're a recipient of the Women of the Year Outstanding Mentor Award by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated at the Lubbock Alumnae Chapter. Talk to us a little bit about what that award means to you from Delta Sigma Theta.
You know, I still remember the day that I got that call. And for me, that award really solidifies the fact that people believe that mentoring matters. And not only does it matter, but that it matters when it comes to the youth. It mentoring is so important because it helps our youth, one, to become the leaders that they really have the potential to be. It helps to reduce bullying. It helps to improve academic outcomes. And so to know that Delta Sigma Theta thought enough of the work that I was doing with youth, to me, just says again that mentoring really does matter and that it is effective when we put those tools into place.
I completely agree with you. I think, when you and I were growing up, I feel like we had people that we could depend on as mentors, older family members, family friends, and things like that. But today, it just seems that college students, they rely on other 18-year-olds for advice instead of finding a mentor. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? You're missing out on so much great experience, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to utilize those resources and find those mentors when you're on whatever college campus you're on. I don't care if it's D1, D2, junior college, you've got to find a mentor because they're available, at least we hope,
Mhm.
but utilize them because man, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I love that. Now, let's talk a little bit about DEI here. I mean, you have over 15 years of experience working with diverse populations. You help organizations become this catalyst for social, cultural, economic change. And the burning question that I have here is, how can historically white organizations, so we're talking about the traditionally white fraternities and sororities found in IFC or Panhellenic councils, how can they become a catalyst for equity and inclusivity on college campuses?
Wow. I really truly believe that despite what we see in the media, when it comes to be it hazing or whatever, incidents that specific um, fraternities or sororities have had, for example, let's say Party in the Projects or what have you. I'm not going to name any organizations, but the important thing is to be intentional. Um, People know what they know, and what they don't know, they don't know. And so I think that Greek organizations can really be that engine to drive the DEI on campuses by one, being intentional about their work. Um, don't worry about it's not about a donation, it's not about just making the statement, but really being intentional and saying we want to be the face. And that intentionality can come in the form of training. It can come in the form of collaboration with other entities on campus. But because I wholeheartedly believe that Greek organizations are leaders, they can really put those leadership roles into practice and be the face of DEI on campuses. Other students look up towards them. I
Mhm.
don't care whether, I often hear students talking about, I want to rush this fraternity, I want to rush this sorority. Well, start that from the very beginning that this is what we stand for, and it's not just a statement, but we take this statement and we put it into action. And I just love showing organizations how to do that because it's possible, regardless of the history, regardless of incidents that have happened across campuses. It is possible to be that face of DEI.
I'm so glad you said that. And I agree with you completely. I mean, no matter what campus we're talking about, the fraternities and sororities are the leaders in campus. They are some of the most involved students that you're ever going to
Yes.
find on a college campus. So if you want to drive change, no matter what that change is, you got to go with the leaders because everybody's looking up to them and they take their cues from the fraternities and sororities in terms of how they conduct themselves on campus. And so I really believe that we can change the narrative if we figure out how to leverage the leadership that's already ingrained in every fraternity
Yes.
and sorority in the nation.
Yes.
I believe that we can do it, and I think that's the way to do it. And so I think we have to somehow flip the script and flip that narrative somehow. And that's really what I aim to do with Greek University is to leverage that leadership to bring that social change that you're talking about. So I'm just happy that you see it the same way I do.
Oh,
I think it's
I
an
I
opportunity.
do. I absolutely do. I mean, we often look at just specific, most often we look at athletics,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
But imagine if we really looked at the number of student athletes who are involved in Greek life, right?
mhm.
Um, it's there. But the other thing is, just as you said, it's ingrained. It is ingrained in those organizations. Yes, they party. Who doesn't as a college student, right? But
Right.
that's the service work. Their missions and their values really do speak to DEI. And it's a matter of that education and awareness and really helping them to see how they can drive that engine and put DEI as um, to make sure that DEI is ingrained in everything that they do.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you look at all those documents and the values of those organizations, it does lend itself very much to DEI. It makes sense because we're already committing to all of these great values. We talk about diversity within our organizations and the values. So DEI makes total sense. I mean, it's like a natural
Absolutely.
progression. But anyway, so, I think that's really interesting. I also wanted to talk to you about this myth of the angry Black woman. Why do you feel like we need more of them?
Well, Mike, historically, African American women have had the worst outcomes. And because of those outcomes, when you look at it, African American women are often stereotyped as angry, as, you know, um, overbearing, harsh. Well, I say we deserve that. And I believe that African American women should be unapologetic about being angry, but use that anger, put some energy in that anger, and channel it in a direction that produces good outcomes, great outcomes for everyone. And so when I say that we need more angry Black women, I say acknowledge the anger. We've often been socialized to suppress it. So I say sit in that anger, acknowledge it, and then do something about it so that decisions are made so that other people have a greater awareness of our plight and our position in this country.
I'm with you, Dr. Banks. I like that a lot. The other thing that you really believe in is empathy. You think that it's so important to have empathy with those who you lead. Why do you think empathy is such an important characteristic?
Wow. Um, just as you said that, I couldn't do anything but think about my coach, Jarvis Scott. Um, we often hear, my graduate major was counseling, counselor education. And oftentimes we're taught, oh, be empathetic, be empathetic. Nothing wrong with that. But I was taught in graduate school that empathy is walking in another person's shoes, right? Well, as time went on, I adapted the definition of empathy of being not only walking in someone's shoes, but leaving them in a better condition when you step out of them.
Mm.
Because it's not enough just to walk in them, but to really fully engage and really fully experience what it is, but then being willing and being intentional about improving and doing something about what you experienced with that other person's life. And so I think it's so, so important, because as a leader, if you can't demonstrate empathy, then how can you really work to improve the lives of others that you lead?
Mm. All the best business leaders have it. So that's definitely a
Yes.
common trait that you see over and over again. So that makes sense. For business owners, how do you think DEI improves the bottom line and improves outcomes for their employees?
You know, kind of lends itself to Greek organizations being that engine.
Mhm.
$8 billion is spent on DEI with businesses. $8 billion a year, right? But it misses the mark. And the reason it misses the mark is because businesses are making donations. Look at the number of statements that went out after George Floyd was murdered. Well, if you do nothing with those statements, are you really improving outcomes? No. Are you really valuing the most important asset, which is your employees? No. So I believe that with businesses, if they really focus on um, DEI from an equity lens, okay, and recognize that number one, it's not just the role of HR to be the face of DEI. It's everyone's responsibility. And so when you do that, you not only have a more diverse workforce, but you have a workforce filled with individuals that come with different experiences. You have more productivity, and you reduce retention. So when you do all of those things, the outcomes for the very people that you believe to be an asset are definitely going to be improved.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, like I said in the intro, I think we can make better decisions, faster decisions with diverse employees or, fraternity and sorority members. And you know what? I mean, if you look at a college campus today, just look at the demographics. I mean, the
Yes.
demographics are changing on college campuses to become so much more diverse. Guess what? If you want to be successful, you better have a DEI plan because
You
I mean, look at the demographics.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, millennials are going to be the most diverse
Yes.
population in this
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, if you're not willing to be intentional and make sure that your policies, practices, and the decisions that you make reflect that,
Mhm.
then if you think the turnover is bad now, keep doing what you're doing and
Yeah,
watch what happens.
you're going to be left in the dust. This is what's going to
That's right.
happen. Your organization is going to fail. So
Absolutely.
I think we need to be paying attention to it. I love in the background, you got your Amazing Race book there. You're the author of Amazing Race, Inspiring Stories and Winning Leadership Lessons from 1968 Olympian and coach Jarvis Scott. Now, this book shows you how to identify and improve your unique leadership style. So for all the college students who are listening right now, how can they identify their unique leadership style?
You know, there are a lot of different assessments and quizzes out there, and I think those are helpful. But I also believe that for college students, it's really important to one, know yourself. Do some self reflection to assess who you are, what it is that you like, what is it that you dislike, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, because no, you may lead from uh, a charismatic type style. You may be fully an empathic leader. You may be more assertive in one area, and then even in some, you might be a little aggressive. But it's once you really identify who you are, what your purpose is, it's much easier to identify your leadership style, but you have to be willing to put in the work, ask for feedback, because oftentimes there are some managers who don't ask for feedback. Well, how will you know how well of a leader you are if you don't ask for feedback? We may not always like what we hear, but asking for that feedback really helps to hone in on our skills as a leader to help us to become more effective.
I like that. And for many of our listeners, the first time you have an opportunity to lead is in your student organization, your fraternity, your sorority. So this is the time for you to figure it
Yes.
out, because now you're going to know what your style is and how you're going to be able to help people after graduation. Once you get into that company and you got a team of people reporting to you, now is your time to figure it out. So go and pick up this book, and I think it's going to help you to improve your unique leadership style. You also talk in the book about ways that people can be more influential. So what's your advice to the college students listening right now on how they can become more influential?
I'm sure some are going, what? Me influential? But it goes back to that whole idea of being a leader. We all have that potential, regardless of our background, regardless of our experiences, to become a great leader. And part of that starts with humility. Um, in order to be an influential leader, you have to be willing to serve others. And if you're not willing to serve others and put their needs in front of yours, it's to me, it's close to impossible. Because we oftentimes put money as influential. Okay, but you can have all the money in the world and still not be influential, because to me, you want to be, if you're influential, then you impact lives and you can change lives. And so humility, empathy, and again, a willingness to put in the work and do the homework to see what is it that I can do to become better. Watch other leaders. Look at other leaders and see what they're doing. That mentoring that you talked about. And sometimes when I say watching other leaders, it's not so much about really having that mentor right there underneath you. Okay, it's just watching what they do, watching what they say, and assessing their leadership skill and comparing it to yours to see, hey, check this box, check that box. I can do this differently. This is maybe that there's something they're doing that you're not, or vice versa. And so it's really, really taking a deep dive into who you are. And what I like to say, this is something I got from an old supervisor, is turning that mirror inward and a willingness to be a critical lover of ourselves.
Mm. Great answer. That's really good. And I also like that piece you were talking about serving others. There's this book out there called Servant Leadership by Robert Greenleaf. And, it's a great book. And, in the book, they talk about leaders and what makes a good leader, what makes a bad leader. If you had money, you can, basically pay somebody off to move your furniture, and basically pack it all up into a van and move away, right? You got money, you can do something like that. But if you really want to change the world, if you really want to make the world a better place, you're going to have more than just the money. You're going to have to be able to capture your employees, their hearts, their minds, and for them to be really bought into the vision and the mission of your organization, so they're willing to go through a brick wall for you. The only way to do that is by serving others. And
Absolutely.
so I think there's something to that. I really like that part of your answer. I thought was really good. Now, there's another chapter in the book. It's called The Call to Know When and How to Delegate. Now, I think college students really struggle with this. They try to do everything themselves, and eventually you see it one by one, they all experience burnout and they're just like done. They're like toast. I mean, they can't do anything. So how should college students delegate in their organization?
I think one, and you just said this, is recognizing that it's not your role or responsibility to do everything yourself. Um, Identify the other leaders in your group, and you get to do that you're able to do that when you've established relationships. Okay. Because it's not enough just to have a team if you've not built relationships and cultivated those relationships with the people that you lead. And so once you've established those relationships, hey, I recognize that Joe is really good. He's really detailed. Well, if you're a leader who just likes to you work well under pressure in the sense of flying by the seat of your pants, if that works for you, there may be some instances where being detail oriented really matters. Okay. So identifying those strengths on your team and having a willingness to let go, because oftentimes we don't want to let go because we think, well, this is how I've been doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's not broke, so why fix it? Well, it doesn't always have to be broke. It's just recognizing that someone else can get the job done and can do it better. And not one of the things I say in my book is it's not about recognition and whose name is going to be called, but recognizing that the job is going to get done. And so once we're able to do that, it keeps that engine going,
Mm-hmm.
and the productivity. And so that the relationship, identifying those strengths and weaknesses, but also recognizing that delegating does not mean relieving yourself of any responsibility. There's still work for you to do. And so do that along with your team so that they see that you're also invested in the work as much as they are.
Yeah, you still got to check in on them and make sure that they're
That's right.
still on track. But, if there's anybody out there who's doing all the work themselves because you think that somebody else is going to screw it up if you let somebody else do it, you got to get out of that mindset as quickly as possible, because you're really cheating the organization of having, sustainability, because eventually you're going to graduate. You don't want to basically have everything on you, and then you graduate and suddenly the chapter has no idea how to function. That's not a successful formula. You have to be able to delegate and give them those opportunities to succeed, because that's what's going to motivate them, and that's what's going to give your organization legs, so it's going to be around for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But if you're doing everything yourself and then you leave and you don't really share any of that information with anybody else, and you don't give them the confidence to know that they can get the job done, the organization's going to fail, and all that work was for nothing.
That's right. And empowerment is a powerful tool. Okay. And by delegating, my goodness, it's not just helping you, but it's helping the individual and overall the organization. And it's really something, because you were talking, it made me think about my coach. Jarvis didn't coach me in the triple jump. She asked the men's assistant coach. They collaborated and he did the coaching. But for her, it wasn't about, oh, well, if Amanda becomes an All-American, who's going to get the credit, right? Because no one says, oh, well, that was a Brown student. They look at the organization. They look at the university, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a willingness to just let go and know that everything's going to be okay in the end.
Yeah, sometimes you got to let go of that credit thing. I know that we need to feed our egos with credit, but at the end of the day, as long as the job gets done, and your organization is standing, in that top podium spot, it really doesn't matter.
You better believe it.
Matter.
Yes.
So these are some great lessons, Dr. Banks. I'm really glad that you were able to share that with our students here. And we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. So the next time I'm speaking at Texas Tech, where should I go for a great meal in Lubbock, Texas?
I don't know if you are aware of this, Mike, but Lubbock, I believe, has more restaurants per capita than any, everywhere you go. I really believe that's the favorite pastime here, is eating. And so there are some good restaurants here. Some, you definitely have your franchises. I'm going to, 2 suggestions. There's a restaurant here that's Orlando's, and it's, I don't know what the official term would be, because It's Italian with a little Texas twist to it.
All right.
Really good place. But one of the things, the food trucks here are amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Nacho Daddy, J&D, it the food trucks here, I don't think you could go wrong.
I love it.
So you see a food truck,
Give it a try.
get to it. Canards Festival, that's not a food truck, but it's a barbecue and just full of carnival foods.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
they're another one. See, I can go on and on because when I say there are a lot of restaurants and food trucks here, there are plenty.
Yeah.
You cannot go wrong.
Yeah, you can't go hungry in Lubbock, Texas. It's
You
not gonna
cannot.
happen. It's impossible. But yeah, I was just curious if there was one that really did it for you. But I think I have some good direction now on where to go to get a great meal next time I'm in town.
Okay. So there is one, and it's funny because the first time I went, I didn't eat.
Mm,
I was like, no, I will not eat. So Korean, it's called Seoul Korean, Seoul. Definitely.
I love Korean food. All right, I'm down. So I'm gonna definitely go check that out, and I'm gonna send you an email. I'm gonna let you know what I think of that place. Also, I want you to know that I'm gonna
If
follow up with you.
you're gonna love it, but please let me know.
I will. So if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, if they want to buy your book, Amazing Race, or if they want to bring you in to speak as a DEI speaker, where should they go to connect with you?
Alrighty, well, you can do it all in one. If you go to getamazingrace.com, there's a link to purchase the book. There's also a link for you to email me regarding speaking engagements. And I would love to come to any of the campuses to help your organization, whether be it be it sorority or fraternity, to help them to really drive that engine and become that face of DEI because you are the leaders on those campuses.
Your work is so important, Dr. Banks. I really appreciate everything that you bring to the table. Go and pick up that book. It's getamazingrace.com. Go and pick up that book. Get Dr. Banks to come to your campus and to sign a whole bunch of books and talk about DEI on your campus. I promise you, you are going to learn a ton. So thank you so much, Dr. Banks. I can't say thank you enough.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I am so delighted to be on, and thank you.
It's my pleasure. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Dr. Banks, make sure that you like it on social media. Make sure you share it with other fraternity and sorority members, other college students. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.